Hello everyone, K-Bob here. Welcome to another installment of EVE Online, and today we're going to talk about armor tanking. So, armor tanking is one of the many ways of tanking in EVE Online. Other ways are shield tanking, speed tanking, and just being repaired by other vehicles, but still with that there's still armor and shield, so it's one of the three main ones. Armor tanking is one. There's a lot more modules towards shield tanking. Let's just kind of undock here so I can kind of show you. There are a few, I guess, caveats to just tanking in general. Some modules have to be active. So right here, here's an armor repair. In order for it to work, I have to click on it and it will do its job. As each cycle it does, it repairs. Obviously I'm at max armor, so it won't repair anything, but one of the things you can notice is that it sucks up capacitor. So that's kind of a form of active armor tanking. Passive, as you can kind of figure out, that it doesn't require capacitor use and it happens in the background. So just a brief overview over these little bars here. The top one, the most outer one, is shields. Second one in the middle is armor, and the last one is structure. So when you take damage, it goes from shields to armor to structure. So one of the things you can notice is for armor tanking, shields kind of like an initial buffer, and then the main meat of your tanking will be done in this inner layer. However, if whoever you're fighting manages to get through that, you see that you have very little buffer to find a way to get out of there. So I would say that's probably a disadvantage. Whereas shield tanking, once this outer layer runs out, you have two other bars to go through to get away. Now, as far as the modules that you can attach, for the most part, they're all low slots. So if you look at your ship fitting, here are the lows. And this, obviously, since this is a frigate, it's not going to have that many to begin with. But usually ones that are geared towards armor tanking has a bit more low slots. But going into it, if you look at armor and hull, you see there are many categories. And the ones that we're going to talk about are these here. Actually, you know what? We can just go through all of it. It'll be fine. So armor hardeners, as they sound, they increase resistances to that particular type for armor. Now it's key to note for all this, it's armor only. So it's not really going to affect the shields or the hull, but it'll just affect the armor. Let's just get that clear for right now. And as you can tell, there are 4 different damage types in this game: electromagnetic or EM, explosive, kinetic, and thermal. Each weapon category usually has their own specific ones. So for example, hybrid turrets do mostly kinetic and thermal, whereas lasers do, I think it's EM and thermal. Rockets have missiles have the wonderful ability of each missile type does damage for each one of these, so you can switch it around. You can tailor it to who you're fighting against, which is very good for fighting PvE rats. And projectiles usually cover a couple of these. Drones, for each racial drone, it has its own specific damage type. And these armor hardeners increase resistances to those. Now, as you can see, there are many flavors of them, and that's just the meta value of them. So this is just a very basic one, and these progressively get better. I can't remember. I don't think it's in order, but you can look at the meta level and compare the two and see. But let's just look at this, and you can see this one has CPU power grid usage, and essentially it's an active module here, as you can tell. This is how much it takes up per cycle. Here's the active cycle, and you can see it adds 50% damage resistance to EM. Now, so the game calculates damage a bit differently than what one would think, and I wouldn't really, I don't think it matters that much. Just know that it does add significant resistance to it, and it's the same for all the other ones. Reactive is a bit different. As you can imagine by the name, a reactive, it reacts to the damage type happening. So essentially it starts out with 60 resistance total spread across all of these, and it is an active module. As you can see, it takes up a bit more energy or capacitor to activate, but the advantage is you really don't have to think about what damage you're being hit with. This thing will react to it. Now, it's a bit slow over time, but it's 60% resistance total. So say if you're getting hit with just EM damage, over a couple cycles, it'll gradually shift these other 15% into the EM. At the end, you'll get 60% resistance to EM for the armor. Armor only. And it won't start being reactive until it starts taking damage in the armor. So there's really no point in turning this on when you still have shields. Okay, they're scriptable. I'm not really sure what this is, but it looks like it's only for capital ships. As you can see by the ridiculous power supply unit, you can't fly it in a smaller ship. Armor plates are pretty simple. They just add a flat out amount of armor hit points to it, and I think even my ship I have now has it. Yeah, see right there. The downside of this is it adds a bit more mass, which means you're a bit slower to accelerate and move around, but like I said, it adds just a flat out hit point bonus, and as you can see, it's pretty substantial for this little frigate. I mean, it adds 200, so it adds quite a bit. And you can see there's many different types covering all the ship classes. I'll get to armor repairs later. The energized plates, if I remember right, these are passive. Yeah, so these are passive. You can tell it isn't because there's no energy activation requirement. So it gives us a passive bonus to each of their respective ones here, and then the adaptive, I think, just gives just a flat out 14% to all of them. I don't think I don't know if it adapts. No, it doesn't. It's not. Yeah, so the reactive one adjusts. This is just a flat out 14% to everything. Let's see, resistance plating. This is another one. Let's look at adaptive. This one also gives just a flat out bonus, but you can see it's less, and it also basically has very little, has no CPU requirements and very little. So this is great that if you just need something on there, you don't have a lot of resources left, as in CPU or power grid, you can just slap this on there and get some resistances. So that's the adaptive, and then and there's one for each, and it just gives 15. Damage controls, these are pretty good, where these provide just a flat bonus to everything, even the hull. So I think this might be an essential requirement for everything, because it gives just so much good resistances to everything, to all of your hit points. And there's only one allowed. You can only equip one. Energized armor plating we have here. This gives a flat bonus, a percentage bonus to armor hit points. I think that's really it. Yeah, and there's just different flavors of them. You can look at the meta level and see which ones are better. I honestly, since it gives you the percentage base, it might be better for bigger ships that have much higher armor. And this is, I guess these are a bit better for kind of buffered tanking, where you don't expect a long fight to happen. You just want to have enough hit points to survive. And I think the layered one is the same kind of deal. Yeah, it just gives less, but also has less requirements. So this is 0 and 1, and I think year, yeah, see year 1 and 20. So really, these kind of do the same thing. It's just really how much CPU and power grid you have left. So to kind of recap these, active armor hardeners are active. You can get a reactive one that kind of shifts the resistances over time. You can get active to each of the damage types. And this one, and so that's the active version of it. These energized platings are the passive version of those. They do not need to be activated, but they give smaller bonuses. And then you have just flat out increase to the armor itself. You have that in armor plates here that make you a bit bigger, heavier, so you're not as maneuverable. And then you have ones that give a percentage base here, and they just vary in the percentage and how much CPU is required. And then the resistance plating that gives a bonus to each resistance, but it has little requirements. And then always a damage control that increases resistances to everything. And then now we can go into the repairs. So there's a repair for each class. We'll talk about smalls. You can see, as with everything, there's different flavors of it. Different tech. There's a tech 2, faction, storyline, dead space, and really you can think of it as a civilian is the most basic, and then it just increases, really. I mean, these are all kind of in the same kind of meta 1, meta 3, whatever. And then faction is better than all of this, and then dead space is better than all of that. And of course, the better it is, the more expensive it is. But so for armor repairs, as you can see, I have one here that they are active. They have an okay requirement, and they repair armor per cycle. And this one repairs 52 hit points. So it's a bit on the slower side when compared to a shield recharger, but it actually recharges more. Oh, that's an ancillary one. But you kind of get the idea. For remote armor repairers here, these can't be used for you, but they're used on like a support ship, and every race has one. If you go to Galente, if I remember right, yeah, no, where is it? It's the fish one. Yeah, here it is. So this one gives specific bonuses to remote armor repairing. So this is one of the remote reppers that if you're flying in a fleet or with a buddy, you can have one buddy do all the damage, and you can just orbit around him and just keep him alive. So they're kind of like healers for armors. And there's one for shields as well. And let's just kind of briefly cover hull. There's hull repairs too, and I think they require nanite? I guess not. But yeah, so there's ones that repair hull as well. I don't think many people hull tank. If you kind of think about it, that it just doesn't seem logical. You can if you want. It's a sandbox game, you can do whatever you want, but I don't know if I recommend doing it. Now, hull upgrades. There's a few things here. There's upgrades to expand the cargo size, and of course this comes at the risk of reducing your maximum velocity and your structure hit points, but it increases cargo capacity. This is pretty good if you want to move something around and you just don't have enough cargo capacity to do it. This is a great way to do it. Nanofiber internal structures. These are good for making it faster to align and warp away, if I remember right. When I had an Explorer, I had a couple of these on it, and it aligned and warped pretty quick. Yeah, because it gives a velocity modifier too. And just remember, in order to warp away, you have to take time to align to that destination, and you don't warp until you hit 75% of your max velocity, whatever it is at that time. So you can imagine of having a velocity modifier, it makes it a bit faster initially, as well as this takes less time for you to move and get aligned. And then reinforced bulkheads, as you can imagine, this increases your whole structure bonus right there, at the expense of increasing your inertia, making you a bit more slower to move around, to like turn. And I think those are mostly for big cargo ships, so I wouldn't really worry about that as any sort of armor tanker. So I think that just about covers it for armor. If you have any questions, let me know, leave some comments, and hopefully a lot of people that are more knowledgeable than I and Eve may be able to answer it if I cannot. So that's it for this episode, and I think in the next one I will cover shield tanking, which is a little bit different, but in general the concepts are still there. They're still similar, but just a little bit different in the way it works. So this is K-Bob signing out. You guys have a wonderful day.